Auditing Azure SQL Active Directory authentication is a critical task to ensure the security and integrity of your database. To begin, you need to understand what Azure Active Directory authentication is and how it works. Azure Active Directory authentication allows users to connect to Azure SQL database using their Azure Active Directory identities, providing a centralized identity management system. First, you need to enable auditing for your Azure SQL database. This can be done by going to the Azure portal, navigating to the Azure SQL database resource, and clicking on the auditing option under the security section. From here, you can enable auditing and specify the audit log's destination, such as Azure Storage or Azure Log Analytics. Next, you need to configure the audit policy to capture the required events. You can do this by creating a new audit policy or modifying an existing one. The audit policy should include events such as login attempts, query executions, and database changes. You can also specify the severity level of the events to be audited, such as high, medium, or low. To audit Active Directory authentication, you need to focus on events related to authentication and authorization. You can use the Azure SQL database audit logs to track events such as successful and failed login attempts, password changes, and role assignments. You can also use Azure Log Analytics to analyze the audit logs and create custom queries to detect suspicious activity. Best practices for auditing Azure SQL Active Directory authentication include regularly reviewing audit logs, implementing alerting and notification mechanisms, and continuously monitoring for suspicious activity. You should also ensure that audit logs are stored securely and in compliance with regulatory requirements. In addition, you can use Azure SQL database features such as Azure Active Directory authentication with multi-factor authentication to provide an additional layer of security. You can also use Azure SQL database threat detection to identify and respond to potential security threats in real time. In summary, auditing Azure SQL Active Directory authentication requires enabling auditing, configuring the audit policy, and analyzing audit logs to detect suspicious activity. By following best practices and using Azure SQL database security features, you can ensure the security and integrity of your database and protect against unauthorized access.